Now settle in, because this is a story about a woman who was handed an opportunity and took it with both hands and absolutely no apology whatsoever. It begins at a railway station, as so many magnificent things do. There is a train, there is a platform, and there is Lady Carlotta, a woman of considerable wit, considerable confidence, and the sort of bearing that makes lesser souls instinctively move out of her way. She has just missed her connection, or her connection has missed her, and she is standing there in that particular way of hers, calm, amused, watching the world with the quiet attention of someone who finds it endlessly entertaining. Now, across the platform, a flustered woman is bearing down on her. This is Mrs. Quabarl. And Mrs. Quabarl is the kind of person who speaks in a breathless rush, who organizes things loudly, and who assumes, with magnificent confidence, that the world will arrange itself to suit her schedule. She has come to collect her new governess, a Miss Hope, and she has decided, entirely on her own authority, that Lady Carlotta is that governess. She doesn't ask. She announces. She sweeps Lady Carlotta toward her waiting motor car with the force of a small, well-dressed tide. And Lady Carlotta, oh, this is the beautiful part. Lady Carlotta says nothing to correct her. She simply looks at Mrs. Quabarl, considers the afternoon stretching before her, and steps into the car. The motor car rattles through the countryside, and Mrs. Quabarl talks. She talks about the children, their names, their ages, their little habits and difficulties. She talks about her expectations. She talks about the previous governess, who apparently did not measure up in several important respects. And all the while, Lady Carlotta sits beside her, listening with the serene expression of someone who is enjoying a very good play. When Mrs. Quabarl pauses long enough to ask about her methods, her educational methods, specifically, Lady Carlotta doesn't miss a beat. She speaks of the Schartz-Metterklume Method. She says it with tremendous authority, rolling those syllables out slowly, letting them fill the motor car like expensive perfume. The Schartz-Metterklume Method. Mrs. Quabarl has not heard of it. Of course she hasn't, but she will not say so. People like Mrs. Quabarl never admit to not knowing a thing. So she nods, thoughtfully, and says, "It sounds very interesting." And Lady Carlotta, warming beautifully to her theme, explains that it involves, among other things, the enactment of historical events. Not reading about them, not reciting dates, actually living them, bringing the past to life through dramatic recreation. Mrs. Quabarl finds this modern and progressive and slightly alarming, but she smiles anyway. The children, she says, can be a little difficult to manage. Lady Carlotta smiles back, a slow, private, absolutely wonderful smile. Difficult, she thinks, will not be a problem. The children are gathered the next morning, and they are, as advertised, a handful. There are 4 of them, sharp-eyed and restless, and they have the collective energy of a weather event. But Lady Carlotta looks at them with something very close to delight. She claps her hands once, briskly, and announces that today they will be learning about the Romans. Not from books, from life. Today, she tells them, they will reenact the famous story of the Romans, carrying off the Sabine women. She assigns the roles with crisp efficiency. The older children will be Romans, fierce and conquering. The younger ones will be the Sabines, bewildered and fleeing. and the household staff, the cook, the parlor maid, a gardener who has wandered into exactly the wrong corridor at exactly the wrong moment. They will serve as the general population. What follows is, by any measure, spectacular. Children career through the hallways, shrieking with historical conviction. The parlor maid is carried off, protesting, by two small Romans who take their roles with unsettling commitment. The cook barricades herself in the kitchen. Something made of china meets the floor. Mrs. Quabarl, drawn downstairs by the noise, stands in the doorway of her own hall with an expression of pure, stunned disbelief. Lady Carlotta surveys it all from the top of the stairs with the composed satisfaction of a general watching a battle go exactly according to plan. History, she thinks, was always meant to feel like something. By afternoon, the Quabarl household has the atmosphere of a place that has recently been through something. The children are flushed and vibrating with a kind of wild, accomplished energy. The staff moves through their duties with the careful quiet of people who are not yet sure the danger has passed. Mrs. Quabarl has changed her expression several times and hasn't found one that quite fits. She confronts Lady Carlotta in the sitting room, or rather, she attempts to, because confronting Lady Carlotta is rather like confronting a very pleasant wall. She listens, she tilts her head, she seems entirely reasonable, and somehow the confrontation never quite takes hold. When Mrs. Quabarl says the morning was chaotic, Lady Carlotta agrees that history is often chaotic. When Mrs. Quabarl says the parlor maid is upset, Lady Carlotta observes that the Sabine women were presumably also upset, and that this is rather the point. When Mrs. Quabarl says she is not sure this is the right method for her household, Lady Carlotta looks at her with enormous patience and says, simply, that results take time. Mr. Quabarl tries next. He is a large man with a large voice, and the confidence of someone who is used to that combination working rather well. It does not work on Lady Carlotta. She listens to him with the same serene attention she gives everything, and when he is finished, she says something pleasant and completely unassailable, and he finds himself backing out of the room without quite knowing how it happened. The following day brings a knock at the door, and with it, the real Miss Hope. She is everything a governess ought to be. Tidy, qualified, a little anxious, and thoroughly genuine. The Quabarls, who are bright enough people in their way, look at Miss Hope, and then they look at Lady Carlotta, and something clicks into place, like a key turning in a lock. There is a moment, just a breath of a moment, where everything hangs in the air. The chaos of the previous day, the Schartz-Metterklume Method, the Romans in the hallway and the cook behind her barricaded kitchen door. All of it assembles itself into a picture, and the picture is not flattering. But Lady Carlotta is already gathering her things. She does it with the unhurried grace of someone who has simply finished what she came to do. Though, of course, she was never meant to be there at all. She nods pleasantly to Miss Hope, who looks confused. She nods to Mrs. Quabarl, who looks furious. She nods to Mr. Quabarl, who opens his mouth and then closes it again. And then she is gone, back to the station, back to her interrupted journey, leaving behind a household transformed and a family with a great deal to think about. No explanation, no apology, just that slow, private smile. Now I ask you, is there a better way to spend an afternoon than that? A lesson, A little history, a little chaos, and an exit timed to absolute perfection. Lady Carlotta would say no. And honestly, sitting here by this fire, I find it rather hard to disagree.